The rain hit my window that Tuesday morning, soft and steady, the kind of rain that makes you want to stay in bed forever. But I couldn't. I had a house to finish clearing out. My name is Daniel Cole, and 3 weeks earlier, my mother had passed away in her sleep. She'd lived in that same house on Maple Ridge Lane for almost 40 years. Now it was just me, a coffee mug going cold on the counter, and boxes stacked in every room, like silent reminders that a whole life could be folded into cardboard. I was pulling up the old carpet in the hallway, planning to sell the place, when my knee hit something hard beneath the floorboard. Not a nail, not a pipe, something flat, wooden. I froze. I pressed my palm against the board, and it gave, just slightly, like it wasn't nailed down at all. My heart started pounding before my mind even understood why. I pried it up with a screwdriver, my hands shaking for reasons I couldn't explain yet, and beneath it I found a narrow set of stairs I never knew existed. Stairs that led down into darkness under a house I thought I knew better than anywhere else in the world. I grabbed my flashlight for a jog and took the first step down. The air changed the second I stepped down, colder, older. It smelled like dust and something else, something like old paper left too long in a closet. The stairs creaked under my weight, each one groaning like it hadn't been touched in decades. My flashlight beam shook across the walls. Concrete, no windows, a room no bigger than my bedroom closet, hidden beneath a house I'd lived in as a kid. I reached the bottom and stood there, breathing hard, my light sweeping the corners. Boxes. Dozens of them, stacked neatly against the far wall, each one labeled in my mother's handwriting. My mother's handwriting. I felt my throat tighten. She'd never once mentioned this place, not when I was a kid sneaking around the house looking for Christmas presents, not when Dad died and she started acting different, quieter, like she was carrying something she couldn't put down. Not even near the end, when the doctors said her mind was going and she'd grab my hand and whisper things that didn't make sense. I stepped closer to the nearest box. My hands trembled as I read the label. It had my name on it, not Daniel. A name I'd never heard before. My eyes moved down the page, and my mother's words started pulling the floor out from under me. "You were not born in this house," she wrote. "You were not born to me. Your birth mother was my younger sister, Rebecca. She was 19, scared, alone, and she asked me to raise you as my own, so you would never carry the shame she believed she deserved." I read it twice, then a third time. My hands were cold now, colder than the room around me. Rebecca. I knew that name, barely. A photograph on the mantel my mother never talked about, a name that came up once at a funeral I didn't understand as a kid, spoken in hushed voices by relatives who stopped talking the moment they saw me listening. I always thought she died young, sickness maybe. Nobody ever gave details, and I never asked twice, because every time her name came up, my mother's face would tighten like she was bracing for pain. Now I understood why. She wasn't just my aunt. She was my mother. The woman who raised me, who tucked me in every night, who kissed my forehead before school, who called me her miracle baby more times than I could count. She'd been carrying this secret in silence for 34 years. And she wasn't done confessing. The next paragraph mentioned a name I didn't recognize, a man. My father, apparently, was still alive. And according to my mother's letter, he lived only 20 minutes away. My chest tightened as I read his name again. Robert Hale. My mother,
The woman I'd called Mom my whole life had written it carefully, like she wanted to make sure I couldn't mistake it for anyone else. "He doesn't know you exist," the letter said. "Rebecca never told him she was pregnant. She left town before she started showing. I don't know if he ever suspected. I never had the courage to find out." I sat there in that cold, hidden room for what felt like an hour, though it was probably only minutes. The flashlight on the floor cast long shadows against the concrete walls. Outside, I could hear the rain picking up, drumming against the house above me, like the world was trying to get my attention. I thought about my childhood, birthdays, report cards, the way my mother cried at my high school graduation like it was the proudest moment of her life. Had she been thinking about Rebecca the whole time? Had every smile carried a secret weight I never noticed? I found more papers in the box. A faded photograph of Rebecca, maybe 17, laughing at a lake, sunlight catching her hair. She looked like me, the same jaw, the same eyes. I pressed my hand against my chest, trying to steady my breathing. Then I found something else at the bottom of the box. A second envelope, sealed. My mother had written just 3 words on the front: "Only if necessary." My fingers hovered over the envelope. Something about those 3 words made my stomach twist. My mother wasn't a dramatic woman. She didn't waste words. If she wrote "only if necessary," she meant it. I told myself to leave it, put the lid back on the box, walk upstairs, forget the stairs even existed, sell the house, and move on with the life I knew. But I couldn't. I tore it open. Inside was a single page, and it wasn't in my mother's handwriting. It was someone else's, slanted and hurried, like it had been written in a hurry. It was signed Rebecca. "Sarah," it began, using my mother's first name. "If you're giving him this, it means I never got the chance to tell him myself. I need you to know something before he goes looking for Robert. Robert isn't the reason I left town. I left because of what his brother did to me. Please don't let my son near that family without knowing the truth first." I read the sentence 3 times, my pulse roaring in my ears. A brother. Something had happened, something bad enough that a scared 19-year-old ran from an entire town rather than face it. I sat there in the dark, holding a letter written by a mother I never got to meet, warning me about a family I hadn't even known was mine. And somewhere 20 minutes away, that family was still living their lives, completely unaware that I existed. I climbed out of that hidden room with the letters clutched against my chest like they might disappear if I loosened my grip. Upstairs, the house looked the same. Same faded wallpaper, same clock ticking on the mantel, but nothing about it felt familiar anymore. I sat at my mother's kitchen table until the rain stopped, reading Rebecca's letter over and over, trying to make sense of a sentence that kept circling back to the same question. What did his brother do to her? She never named him. Maybe she couldn't bring herself to write it down. Maybe she thought Sarah already knew enough to protect me without details. I thought about calling my cousin Marissa, the only relative left who might remember Rebecca as more than a name on a headstone. We weren't close, but she was older, and she'd grown up hearing the family whispers I never had access to. I called her that night. My voice shook when I said Rebecca's name out loud for the first time in my life, like she actually mattered to me.
There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Why are you asking about her?" Marissa finally said, her voice careful, guarded. "Daniel, where did you hear that name?" I told her about the room, the letters, the truth my mother had buried under our house for 34 years. Marissa went quiet again, longer this time. Then she said the words that made my blood run cold. "You need to talk to Grandma Joan before you do anything else. There's more to this than what's in that letter." Grandma Joan lived in a small assisted living home across town, the kind with fake flowers in the lobby and a television always playing some old game show nobody watched. I hadn't visited in almost a year. Guilt hit me the moment I walked through those doors, but it disappeared fast, replaced by something sharper: urgency. She was sitting by the window when I found her, a blanket over her knees, her eyes cloudy but still sharp enough to recognize me. "Daniel," she said, smiling, "come sit." I didn't waste time. I told her everything: the hidden room, the letters, Rebecca, Robert, the warning about his brother. Her smile faded slowly, like a light dimming. "I told Sarah this day would come," she muttered, mostly to herself. "I told her secrets don't stay buried, they just wait." "Grandma, what happened to Rebecca? What did his brother do?" She looked at me for a long moment, her hands twisting the edge of her blanket. "His name was Gerald, Robert's older brother. Charming. Everyone loved him. Rebecca worked for their family business that summer. Gerald took an interest in her that wasn't right. She was 17 when it started, barely 18 when she found out she was pregnant." My stomach dropped. "Are you telling me—" Grandma Joan's eyes filled with tears. "Gerald is your biological father, Daniel, not Robert. Rebecca lied to protect herself and to protect you." The room seemed to tilt around me. I gripped the arm of the chair beside Grandma Joan's bed just to stay upright. "That's not possible," I said, though even as the words left my mouth, I knew she wasn't lying. Grandma Joan didn't have the strength left in her to invent something this cruel. "Rebecca was ashamed," she said, her voice trembling. "Gerald was 26. She was a teenager working under him. When she told her parents, nobody believed a girl over a man like that. So she ran, and she let everyone believe Robert was the reason, because Robert was closer to her age. It was easier for people to accept, safer for her reputation." I sat there stunned, trying to rearrange everything I thought I understood about my own existence. The man 20 minutes away wasn't my father at all. He was innocent in all of this, just as unaware as I'd been an hour ago. "Is Gerald still alive?" I asked quietly. Grandma Joan nodded, her expression hardening. "He is. Runs the family construction business now, successful, respected in town. Nobody ever knew what he did to that girl." My hands curled into fists in my lap. "Does he know about me?" "No," she whispered. "Rebecca made sure of that. She protected you the only way she knew, by disappearing completely." I thanked her, kissed her forehead, and walked out of that building with a storm building inside my chest. I had a name now, Gerald, and I had questions only he could answer. I sat in my car in the parking lot for almost 20 minutes before I could make myself turn the key. Rain streaked down the windshield, blurring the streetlights into smears of gold. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Gerald Hale, a man who built a successful business, respected in town, who had no idea that 34 years ago he'd shattered a teenage girl's life so completely she'd run and never looked back. I found his address through the company website, Hale Construction, third-generation family-owned. There was a photo of him on the site, gray-haired now, smiling in a hard hat next to a half-finished building. He looked ordinary, kind even. That made it worse, somehow.
I didn't drive there that night. I told myself I needed time to think, but the truth was I was scared. Scared of what I'd say, scared of what I'd feel, standing in front of the man who was my biological father, under circumstances no child should ever have to learn about. Instead, I went home and read Rebecca's letter one more time, searching for anything I'd missed. That's when I noticed something in the corner of the page, small, almost invisible, a date, 3 weeks before she disappeared from town for good. I searched that date alongside her name, and what I found stopped my heart. There'd been a police report filed. Rebecca hadn't just walked away quietly. She'd tried to report him. I found the record buried in an old local news archive, a short paragraph from 34 years ago, easy to miss unless you knew exactly what you were looking for. A young woman had filed a complaint against a local business owner's son. No name printed, protecting her identity even then. The case had been closed within a week. Insufficient evidence, it said. No further action taken. I sat there, staring at my screen, anger building in my chest like something physical. Rebecca hadn't stayed silent because she was ashamed. She tried to speak up, and the town had silenced her instead. A powerful family, deep roots, deep pockets. A scared teenage girl against all of that never stood a chance. That's when I understood why my mother built that hidden room. She wasn't just protecting a secret. She was protecting evidence, in case one day I needed the truth to defend myself, or to finally give Rebecca the justice she never received. I called Marissa again that night, and this time I asked her to help me find anyone else from that summer who might remember what really happened. Old coworkers, neighbors, anyone still alive who knew Rebecca before she disappeared. 2 days later, Marissa called me back, her voice trembling with something between fear and relief. She'd found a woman, Rebecca's old roommate from that summer, still living in town, and she said she'd been waiting 34 years for someone to finally come asking questions. Her name was Linda, and she lived in a small house at the edge of town with wind chimes on the porch that clinked softly the entire time we talked. She was older now, gray-haired, kind-eyed, but the moment I said Rebecca's name, her whole face changed. I always wondered if anyone would come, she said, inviting me inside. She told me everything Rebecca never got the chance to. How Gerald had pursued her relentlessly that summer, using his position to isolate her from other friends. How he'd threatened her job when she tried to pull away. How terrified she'd been to speak up in a town where his family controlled half the local economy. Linda had begged her to fight the case, had even offered to testify, but the police never took her seriously either. After the case got dropped, Linda said, her voice breaking, Rebecca packed a bag in one night and left. She said if she stayed, she'd lose herself completely. I never blamed her for running. I just wished she hadn't had to run alone. Linda agreed to write down everything she remembered and sign it. Real evidence. Not enough to undo 34 years of silence, but enough to finally make Gerald face the truth. I drove to Hale Construction the next morning, my hands steady for the first time in days. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for the truth Rebecca never got to speak out loud herself. I stood in the lobby of Hale Construction, Linda's signed statement folded in my jacket pocket, my mother's letter tucked beside it like armor. A receptionist called back to his office, and a few minutes later Gerald Hale walked out to meet me, still wearing that same easy smile from the website photo. "Can I help you?" I said. "My name is Daniel Cole. I think you knew my mother, Rebecca." His smile faltered, just slightly, enough to tell me he remembered her name after 34 years, even if he never expected to hear it again. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse him the way I'd imagined 100 times in my head. I simply laid the truth in front of him, piece by piece, the way my own mother had laid it in front of me. Rebecca, the police report, Linda's statement, the son he never knew he had. Gerald sat down slowly, the color draining from his face, and for the first time I saw something behind his practiced charm. Fear, maybe even shame, 34 years too late. He didn't deny it. I didn't ask for money. I didn't ask for his name or his business. I only asked him to finally admit in writing what he'd done to a scared teenage girl who never got the chance to defend herself. He did. I drove home that evening as the sun broke through the clouds for the first time in days, gold light spilling over Maple Ridge Lane. I sat on the porch steps of the house my mother built her whole life around, the house that hid a truth to protect me until I was strong enough to carry it myself. I finally understood. My mother never lied to hurt me. She lied to shield me,
And when she couldn't shield me anymore, she left me exactly what I needed to find the truth myself. Some rooms stay hidden not to bury the past, but to wait for the moment we're ready to face it.